I'm about to say something unironically that may seem ironic. This tiny little laptop by Chuwi is actually one of my favorite laptops I think I've ever used. This here is the Chuwi MiniBook X. This laptop is tiny, absolutely tiny. It's an 11.5 tiny little laptop. It's also a convertible yoga style laptop. You can see that there. This thing is surprisingly good quality. It's all metal, so you get a metal lid, metal bottom, and a metal keyboard deck there. It has a really nice keyboard on it. It's a touch screen, obviously, because it's a little convertible thing. You can get a pen with it. I don't have one yet, but I'm actually planning on picking one up. Chuwi sent this over. They actually contacted me and asked me if I wanted to review this. I reviewed one of their laptops before in the past, and actually it was surprisingly good for the price. This one here is the same idea. It's not super expensive. It's also not a super behemoth in terms of performance. This one you should actually consider, and I'm not joking, you should actually consider this product. So let's jump into the review, and I'll show you why I've been using this thing as a secondary daily driver for the past 2 weeks. Look at it. Look at how cute it is. It's a tiny little laptop. Here's a 16-inch laptop, relatively big, I would say. Little ThinkPad, little Chuwi. Look at that. Look at it. So obviously it's a very tiny little laptop. It's almost something that I would say would compete with a tablet, like a Android style tablet. Of course, this one here is Windows, full-fledged Windows, with a respectable CPU, enough to get things done. I've been messing around with this for a few days already because it was so cute that I just had to. All metal design is quite nice. Metal top, metal bottom. I think that's a metal interior. Looks like it's a unibody, so I'm assuming it is. If not, it's the best plastic ever. But that's quite nice there. Weight on the little guy is obviously not going to be that high. 914 grams. Now, again, it could be lighter if it was plastic, but it's not plastic. It's all metal, which is quite nice because it's a premium little guy you're going to be carrying around, almost like a notebook size. And so you don't necessarily want something like this to be plastic and very, very breakable. Here's a typical little clipboard, right? Easily smaller than a little clipboard. This is a Framework 13 outstanding laptop. I'd call it considered relatively tiny, but it's not small, like in a bad way. It's just a nice little portable guy. Really quite clean. This is a great option because this is a good comparison because this is around the same size as a MacBook Air. It also has the same screen ratio as well as a MacBook Air. So realistically, very similar footprint overall, right? And even that, I mean, that's going to be almost the same height that way, right? You can basically place this in for a MacBook Air, realistically, in terms of footprint. Decent I/O too. You get a headphone jack on the left side. I mean, that's not really staggering, but headphone jacks are not as common as you may think. Your heat exhaust is at the left side, so it's not going to burn into your legs if you're holding it like that. Right side, you get 2 USB-C. So is that the same as a MacBook Air? Despite the fact that this thing's tiny. That's the one that's for power. That's the other USB-C. Nothing on the back. You do get hinges. I kept the plastic things on, the little protectors. Very nice. And then inside the laptop, let's have a look here. So that's a look at the laptop here. You can see glossy screen because it is a touch screen. Makes sense, right? It's a little tablet type thing. It does support pen. You can buy a pen off of them. They didn't actually send me a pen, which is interesting. So I might actually pick one up just because this laptop is sick and I'm going to keep using it. So I might end up getting a pen. Camera bump out there. You actually get a reasonably and respectable size keyboard there, right? This is not that much of a shrunk down keyboard. I'd say it's smaller than like a absolutely true full size keyboard because some of them like these less important keys are a little bit shrunk. The enter key is a little bit shrunk. Shift is still relatively large. So you get a little bit of shrinking of the keyboard, right? The num are just slightly smaller there, right? But the actual typing keys are pretty much full size. And then of course is a flip around style, right? So you can use it like that there. You can use it like that there. It's a full flip around type thing. Very nice hinge feeling on that. Very premium. It's firm, but it's not too firm. It's enough to just hold the screen, right? Like that's not wobbly, right? Look at that. Like unless you're going bloom, bloom, but that's not a wobbly screen by any means. Very, very nice. So let's open up the laptop. Spoiler alert, I've already opened it because I was just so curious. But let's open it up on camera so that you guys can see how cool this thing is inside. Getting inside I actually found easy because I just used the little speaker grill to just go like that. It's super easy to get into. Metal bottom, like I said. Nice and thin and everything. A little bit of a heatsink of some kind there, which is interesting. But nice little metal bottom. Nothing fantastic, nothing abnormal, just bottom. And look at the inside of this cute little guy. Look at those speakers. Those are like the higher wattage variant where they have the rectangular style. I don't know if you can see that through that. It might not show up well on camera. Let me get some light on that. Can you see that? May not show up. Yeah, you can see it now. It's the rectangular style higher wattage speakers where they're not those round kind of garbage ones that just sound so bad. Battery is not massive. It's also a tiny little laptop, but it is like almost 30 watt hours on this laptop here, and it's a very low wattage system. The actual CPU, the whole system is going to be very low wattage, so I don't anticipate this thing to have bad battery by any means. The funny part is here, a full size 2280 NVMe. Like what? Like what? There's laptop makers out there who have full 14-inch, if something even 16-inch laptops, and they have tiny little 2230 drives in there, like these little guys here. That's all they can manage to fit in, right? Sometimes if you're lucky, you might get a 2242. These guys managed to put a full 2280 in there, so easy to upgrade. This is a 512 gigabyte NVMe in there. I believe it's a Gen 3, but that's going to be fine for this kind of system. RAM is soldered to the motherboard. Obviously, this thing's tiny. Like you can't put sodium sticks in something like this. You could, but it would just eat up half the system. Luckily, this one here has 12 gigabytes of RAM, so it's not going to be that 8 that is like unusable almost with Windows. 12, there's a huge difference between 8 and 12. This is not a gaming machine. This is not, a programming powerhouse or a massive video editing machine. So, where I say you should have 16 gigabytes or more, doesn't apply that much to a system like this. 8 gigabytes would be rough because as soon as you load this thing up, I mean, Windows is going to take up like probably 5, maybe even 6 gigabytes of RAM. So having 8 gigabytes is kind of a bit rough. You open up some Chrome tabs and you're already done. This one here, having a nice NVMe that's going to give you good speeds. So you do have that page file, which is fine. But then you actually have 12 gigabytes of RAM. It's a lot more overhead than you think. Cooling is not going to be needed much for it, but you actually get a respectable fan here. Big chunk of copper there. I actually already inspected that. That had really good paste on it. I'll flash a picture up on the screen. Really good paste on it. This is, I mean, if anything, this might be overkill for a chip like this. This is not, by any means a high wattage chip. I believe this is rated for 7 watts. I think it can boost up to 10 watts. So this looks really good. But I mean, this thing looks shockingly good inside. You're not going to get upgradable Wi-Fi and all this kind of stuff on a little tiny tablet type thing. But for what it is, I mean, I'm pretty impressed just with that NVMe right there. What it actually has here is a N100 Intel CPU, which is not anything special, but it is a true 4-core processor. So it's going to be good for day-to-day stuff. Looks base speed 0.8. So it's, it's not some behemoth. You're not going to be doing 4K editing on this thing. You could do video editing, but you're not going to be doing, multi-stream 4K editing. It'll be a little slow for that, but it's, it's capable, obviously, for day-to-day use here. The RAM here is, I would say, fine for what it is. It's 12 gigabytes of RAM. Obviously, 16 would be better. 8 would be rough. Like you can see here, we're using 5, and I think I have like Paint open and a Notepad and this itself. So Windows uses a lot of RAM these days. So very nice that it doesn't just come with 8 gigabytes. That wouldn't be enough. This 12 gives you a lot of overhead there because you basically have another 6 or so to work with here, 6 or 7 here to work with over what I have. So, I mean, you can open up tons of Excel spread. You can open up, spreadsheets, documents, and that, and get a bunch of, Chrome tabs or Edge tabs or whatever open, and you'll be good to go. That's kind of nice there, and it does run fast, and the RAM here runs faster, 4800 mega transfers. So it is DDR5 memory, which is nice. So it's not going to be super slow. The SSD, I'm not sure what it is. It's an Air Disk 512 gigabyte SSD. Again, 2280. You can swap it out if you want. The speed on it seems okay. I've already done a little test on it. You'll see when we get to the benchmark section. It's fine. Wi-Fi here is good. Wi-Fi, reasonably good Wi-Fi here. You can see Wi-Fi AX101. You'll see when we get to the test there, it runs reasonably fast as well. Not going to be doing any serious gaming on this device here. Ultra Intel UHD graphics, but you can do some older stuff, no problem. Some older games from back in the day. Let's do a little typing test here. The keyboard is a cute little guy. I've done a little typing already on it. Spoiler, it's actually kind of nice for what it is. Bring this down here and do a little typing test. Again, you do get the full size, I guess it would be full size or almost full size keyboard there. They do shrink a few of the keys, so the actual number keys are shrunken slightly because they wouldn't fit otherwise. Yeah, so they're actually quite nice. They are just a tiny bit closer than probably other keyboards that I use and just a tiny bit smaller in some cases. But I mean, it's funny because this keyboard is way better than a Mac keyboard, way better than a MacBook. You can see there that the physical keycaps are actually larger, right? So they're taller keycaps than you'd get on a MacBook. Very nice. And you can see here that the trackpad has, this is a smooth texture. This is a very smooth texture. It actually feels quite nice to use this here. Really, really smooth and nice. And the click is really nice. But it's not like a gaming laptop. This is the type of device you would move from place to place and probably do a lot of typing on it, right? That's probably the niche that this is filling out. So you can take this to class, you can take this to meetings, you can type down notes on it, just close it up, take it with you because it's so portable. So, I mean, it makes sense that it has such a nice keyboard, such a nice trackpad on it because it's really being used as an input device. So the screen here is obviously not huge or anything like that. It's interesting though, because despite the fact that it is a 10.5 inch screen, you can see me in it, reflective, it's a 1200p screen. So 1200p at 10.5 inches actually has very high pixel density. Normally 13 inch laptops, 14, I think that's kind of the peak of where I'd want to go with 1200p. Normally then above that, like a 15 or 16 inch, I want to see it stepped up. But that I consider actually to be pretty high pixel density on such a small screen. And it actually looks very crisp as a result here. The refresh rate is kind of strange on this one here. You can see that it's only 50 hertz, which is a little weird. I guess that's like a European standard. I don't know if it's still a European standard. It used to be back in the day, in the earlier console eras, 8-bit, 16-bit. That's where I know it from. I can't really tell the difference between 60 and 50 hertz. It's not really that noticeable. Sometimes you might, I guess you can't really see it. Before there was a little bit of a flicker on the camera, but you can't see it in real life. So if you do notice that on the video after, it's not visible to a normal person. But what you can see here, though, is it actually has really nice colors. You can see that there. It looks really nice. The colors are nice and vibrant. Of course, it is a touchscreen, right? Of course, it has that pen support that I said before. And it does have an accelerometer, I guess would be the term there. So if you go like that there, for example, you're going to be able to do things like that there. It's going to go into this mode here, right? So you're going to be able to, flip the thing around. If you're going to be drawing using the pen or whatever, you're going to be able to do that. It is obviously a touchscreen, glossy touchscreen. The actual touchscreen seems nice and responsive too. I mean, again, it's not going to have a 13950HX processor like my ThinkPad over there, but it's still going to be more than enough for just general Windows use. It's nice and snappy. Yeah, it seems okay, to be honest. There's obviously like a tiny little bit of delay, but I don't really notice it much more than any other laptop. That could be because it's 50 hertz. I noticed the same thing on a 60 hertz laptop, touchscreen laptop. When you go to 120 hertz, it's faster, I guess I'd say. It feels a little bit more responsive. But typically I find, 60 hertz refresh rates not quite as nice. Make a little 3D cube. Very nice. The touchscreen is responsive. I think with the pen, it would really push it over that edge there. It's not going to use just like any old, kind of non-capacitive type thing here. So it's not 100% DCI-P color space, right? But it has good colors, to be honest. I mean, part of it is that you do have this touchscreen going on here. So it does add a little bit more vibrancy, I guess I'd say, to it. It's not super bright. Again, it's not going to be a 1000-nit screen or anything like that. It's not going to be 100% DCI-P, but overall I find it looks pretty good. The color space is respectable, I would say. Right, looking fairly vibrant. The sRGB, I would say. Right, that looks good. I actually just finished a test on a 45% NTSC screen, and this thing looks way better than that. That thing was looking kind of crappy, to be honest. So coming right from that to this little tiny screen is actually really nice. Blacks look good, again, because it's a glossy touchscreen. A lot of the time, it doesn't give you OLED blacks, but it gives you pretty darn close. When you have an anti-glare coating on an IPS screen, it really does kind of wash it out a bit. You're going to notice that the blacks will come down and the contrast. Notice that the blacks will come up, the contrast will kind of look like crap. When you get a glossy IPS screen, typically the colors look more vibrant and the blacks look better as well. So despite the fact that this isn't like an OLED with 100% DCI-P, it actually looks pretty darn good. Right, green's looking vibrant here too. Nice and sharp on this screen too. It's 1080p, 1200p at this resolution is actually very sharp. 1080p or 1200p at this screen size is actually I'd consider it pretty sharp. You can see there's no issues with the processor snapping through. Right, like it actually looks pretty darn good, right? For a tiny little screen like this, it's quite nice, honestly. I guess the only way to really improve it would be, I don't know, make it an OLED or something, but I wouldn't want that because it would not necessarily make the laptop way more expensive. You could make it 120 hertz, then it would kill the battery and it would also be more expensive. You can give it 100% DCI-P, then it would be more expensive. So, I mean, this is a pretty good compromise, right? And the colors look great, to be honest. For what it is, I think it looks pretty darn good. Check the audio here. I'm actually not too sure how it's going to sound. Those speakers looked respectable, though. So, let's see. It's pretty loud, actually. It's quite loud. They're okay. They're actually not bad. They don't have a lot of bass, right? They're small little speakers. The bass is kind of, look at this tiny little thing on the camera. The bass is not really prevalent, really. The mid-range is fine, though. The upper range is quite strong. The mid-range is actually a little bit muted, I would say, and the upper range is obviously more potent. I'd probably tweak that. I'd get like, FX Sound or something like that. Bring up those mids slightly, bring down the highs just a little wee bit, and I think it would sound a little bit better, but they're fine. Like, I don't have an issue with those speakers again. Okay, so we'll do a little bit of noise testing here. We'll just fire up Cinebench, take a look at the temperatures. Again, this is not some behemoth, right? This is not going to have crazy high performance or anything like that, but it's still going to be capable. So let's look at the temperatures and the noise and the voltage and the watts as well. So you can see the thermal issue. There's no thermal issues whatsoever. 6440, 6450, right? Really nothing there. The CPU is pulling a decent amount of watts too, 11.7. I think it's rated for 7, technically. The device is essentially almost silent. $33.5. I can hear it, I would say. However, it is very difficult to hear. If there was any noise whatsoever in this room and it wasn't dead silent, you wouldn't be able to hear the fan at all. Like if there was anything. Okay, and here's a look at some benchmarks. We can see here that the Cinebench score is obviously nothing outstanding, but 2800 is honestly still respectable for such a tiny little chip and such a tiny little laptop. Then you can see here battery life is actually really good on this laptop. It has a tiny little battery, so I mean, we're not going to expect staggering battery life, but you can see here on idle, 100% brightness, we are only burning about 3.8 watts, up to 4 watts or so. So honestly, that's still going to be good for about 5 or 6 hours in the idle, just hanging out. I did some casual browsing here, just messed around, going to different websites and that. And yeah, it went up a little bit. We were losing an extra watt or so 4.8. And again, we're still looking at like probably, honestly, 4 hours, maybe 5 of casual browsing. YouTube takes a little bit more as well. We're going up to about 5.8 or so. So here we're probably going to get around 4 hours of YouTube, maybe 4.5, even 5. You can see around about 85% battery. So realistically, you're going to be able to get most likely probably between 4 and 6 hours out of this laptop for day-to-day use. Then you can see the Wi-Fi here. Again, not staggering speeds, but certainly respectable. It's still pretty quick overall. And that included AirDisk NVMe. It actually has pretty good speeds here. So again, for a tiny little laptop, totally fine. Of course, you can swap it if need be. Okay, here's a look at the webcam. Certainly nothing special. Kind of not brightening me up too much. I guess that's fine. There's not a lot of light coming from the front. Most of it's coming from the sides, and it doesn't seem to be overcompensating. I'm not sure if it will look like this afterwards, but it's like a square style aspect ratio, which is interesting. Most of the time they're 16:9 aspect ratio. Okay, I want to do a little bit of gaming here. This is a brand new 2024 title. 2023, 2024, I think it is. It's a remake. This is a Square Enix From Mission remake. So there's going to be, I mean, realistically, hundreds of thousands of games you can play on this laptop, even though it's tiny. You're not going to be playing, Starfield at 4K, realistically, but you're going to be able to play really any game that's older. These Intel graphics are totally fine for older games. Things like 2019, 2020, or earlier, you're going to be fine, especially at a lower resolution like this. You do have extra RAM on the system. So it's not an 8 gigabyte system, it's a 12 gigabyte system. You can see here that in this game, with the whole system running, everything running, we're still under 8 gigabytes, meaning we still have more, because this game is not going to use a lot of VRAM. You'll be fine. depending on the game you're using, like you're going to be able to play older, even AAA titles, as long as they're older, right? Like 2019, 2018, you'll be able to play those no problem. 3D AAA titles, modern games, even brand new games, 2023, 2024, like this, you're going to have no problem. Like you can see here, we're at 50 FPS. We're on medium settings too. Like I didn't turn them way down or anything like that. Look at this. Reset that. Yeah, I mean, even in game, while panning in that, we're still well above. I mean, this is a turn-based strategy game. Well above 30, good lows, right? It only drops down when it was doing loading. Look at this. There might be animation drop downs, but yeah, let's attack with my, I can't read what that says. I think that's a melee attack. We'll do that. Yeah. Oh, it's a shotgun. Look at that. Okay, so that's the review here of the little Chuwi Minibook X. What do I think about it? Well, let's go over the negatives first. It is a 50 hertz refresh rate screen. That doesn't matter. It does make it flicker on camera. You see that on camera, how it flickers? It doesn't mean anything. In person, I don't see that. During the screen section, it actually just, the phone, I guess, just figured out that it was going 50 hertz and it's stabilized. But if you record in 60 hertz, which is what we use in North America, Europeans might still use 50 hertz, I'm not sure. But in North America, we use 60 hertz, and so you get flicker on camera. You don't see it in real life. It doesn't matter. And you don't notice it when you're like using the desktop. You know, it's not a high refresh screen, but it's fine. You don't notice it whatsoever. What other negatives would there be? None. I mean, it's not more powerful, but then it would be more expensive and the battery would have to be bigger and it would be hotter and it would be bigger. So, I mean, realistically, there's not really any negatives other than maybe filming it on camera is kind of a pain. You get exactly what you're supposed to do. I've said this before in my other videos. If a product has a niche that it's trying to fulfill, and it fulfills that niche, then it's a superb product. Sometimes even considered a perfect product, because the only way to make this better would be make it vastly more expensive. It's not expensive. It has excellent touchscreen, good, really good screen in general, acceptable to good speakers. The keyboard is legitimately outstanding, especially for the size. The keyboard is outstanding. Nice little trackpad, despite the fact that it's tiny, it's nice. You can also just navigate with touch. The hinges feel great. It's all metal, like metal top, metal bottom, metal lid. The internals are surprisingly good on this well. Full-size NVMe 2280, like what? I've seen large 16-inch laptops that don't even have 2280. I think I'm editing one right now. It's crazy to me. So this laptop is, I could actually give this a 10 out of 10, legitimately. Not because there aren't better products out there. Like there are other products that would be more powerful, more capable. But I mean, there's other compromises. You're going to be more expensive. They're going to be larger. They're going to potentially be, they're going to have more heat issues, more noise issues. There's always something you have to compromise. At this form factor, I can't really see much of a way to improve this product. You could put a slightly more capable processor in here. Like maybe you could put a low power AMD, 8640U or something in here, and that would make a little bit more sense in terms of like raw performance in this laptop, but it would also become much more expensive. So potentially I would like to see maybe, suggestions, I guess. Maybe if these things sell really well and Chuwi starts to see a lot of return on these products and they start to get a lot more interest, maybe this exact laptop here with a low power AMD, which would allow a little bit more graphical capability and you get a lot more processing capability and they don't run super hot, it would increase the price a lot, potentially, because those chips to buy for Chuwi would cost more money, meaning you would have to pay more as a consumer. But as it is right now, I can't really see much to actually critique about the product. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it does it incredibly well. Honestly, incredibly well. I'm going to be using this product probably all the time. It's going to be like a perfect little countertop media device, a little typing device if I'm just hanging out in bed or something like that. If I'm going to just a coffee shop or driving someone somewhere, I'm going to wait for them, sit in my car. I'm just going to take this. Why would I take my full laptop to just type up some stuff and do some casual browsing? This thing is amazing and it has a great screen, and touchscreen is nice. So awesome product. Thanks to Chuwi for sending this over. I'll look for some links if I can find them on the Amazon website. Put them down below. They sell directly through their website as well. They have lots of links there. And I've from what I've read online, Chuwi has pretty good reputation. I mean the products are great for me. But from what I've read online, they make good stuff and people seem to be happy with the company. So I'm happy to put some links down below. They won't be affiliated or anything through Chuwi. I don't have any affiliation. But check it out. It's a cool product, like legitimately, actually a really cool product.